Well, hello everyone. It is that Weems guy here for yet another episode. We're actually recording this on December the 12th at 7:20 p.m., but you won't hear it until next week. But it won't be next week when you hear it. It'll be this week when you hear it. Joining joining me tonight is Ed Mireles. And if you don't know that name, you should, because Ed was involved in one of the more pivotal incidents in American law enforcement. And we'll get into that in a moment. But Ed, if you would say hello and introduce yourself to the audience.
Hey guys, Ed Mireles here. Glad to be here this evening with Lee, and hopefully we'll give you an informative conversation.
All right. Um, if you haven't gotten on Google yet and figured out who this is, Ed was one of the agents that was involved in the infamous Miami firefight, April 11th, 1986. I remember the date.
Correct. Yeah.
Uh, Several years ago, myself and John Hearn were in an FBI patrol rifle instructor class, and it was April the 11th, and I don't remember the exact year. As someone in the class started a caliber debate in the class, and Herm buried his face in his hands, and I like quickly got a picture of that. He's like, they're arguing about calibers on the anniversary of it. Just
That's funny. That's
yeah.
funny.
And of course, that would tell you that he obviously knows about the incident because he knew it was the anniversary of the day.
Right.
All right. Obviously, we're going to talk about Miami tonight, but that's one part of your life. That's an incident that you were involved in, and I'm sure it shaped most of the rest of your life, but that's not your entire life. So how did you get up to that point? Tell us about you before that day.
Well, Lee, thanks for asking. Because when I wrote my book, my FBI Miami Firefight, 5 minutes that changed the bureau, I
Mhm.
actually had written an autobiography,
Mhm.
and the book, my original book, was like 500 pages long. I had everything from my childhood, where I was born, raised, brought up, and stuff like that. And after many years and editing, all the professional editors seem to think, hey, you know what, your childhood, your background is a waste of time. People don't want to know who you are or where. And I'm thinking, wow, well, that's unusual. So I cut all that out, and then when
Mhm.
I put my book out about 3.5 years ago, May of 2018, I think it was,
Mhm.
um, people said, "Hey, why didn't you put more about your background, about your childhood?" And I'm thinking, you can't win.
Yeah.
The professional people are saying, "Don't," nobody
Yeah.
cares, and the reader is saying, "Hey, we want to know more about your background."
Right.
So I appreciate the opportunity to talk. I was born in Texas, South Texas, in early 1950s. I was the oldest of four kids, and obviously a Mexican family down there. And in all honesty, I had a great childhood, man. I look back on it, I laugh, and I thank God. I'm thinking, thank you, Lord. I had a great family, mother, father, three, a brother and two sisters, and I was kind of like in like a prison because our house was set like at a cul-de-sac. We were at the 6 o'clock on the cul-de-sac, and then my dad's mom, my paternal um, grandmother, was at 3 o'clock, and my mom's mom, my maternal grandmother, was at the 9 o'clock position, and then of course the 12 o'clock position was the street. So I mean, I had two grandmothers on both sides, and I don't know how that worked out that way. But man, I tell you what, if you acted up or acted the fool, man, judgment would come down from on high. Boom.
I grew up in very similar circumstances in Middle Georgia. I grew up next door to my father's mother,
Mhm,
but my father's brother lived on the other side of us, and my grandmother's brother lived across the street from us with two of his children
mhm,
uh, living on his property. And then
mhm.
all of the twice in my lifetime, there's been four generations alive on both sides of the road,
Right. Well,
and
I
then
tell you
other
what, man.
great uncles and aunts within
I tell you
miles
what.
of us.
Family is a good. I mean, that's the good drill sergeants. No, but like I said, I had a great life. You know, it was church, family, school,
Mhm.
you know, and then when I was about 6 years old, we moved from I was born in Alice, Texas. We moved about 50 miles away because my dad had been commuting back and forth to
Mhm.
work for like 2 or 3 years. He goes, this is ridiculous, you know, even though gas was like 15 cents a gallon at the time, you know, he said that's too expensive. So we moved, you know, we picked up and moved, you know, and then ended up in a place called Beeville. And you know what? Again, it was a great childhood. You know, I mean, um, I think back on it and I have to laugh. You know, I said, "Hey, I didn't realize it at the time, but we were all dirt poor. You know, everybody was dirt poor. I mean, you know, it's like everybody, the whole
Yeah.
town was poor. You know, so and nobody had air conditioning. You know, and I used to sleep like a baby. You know, we
Yeah.
slept with the windows open, the
Mhm.
screen door up. You know, and had a great time. You know, and then you know, there's reality start coming into life, you know, but that's back in the mid 60s.
Mhm.
You know, the Vietnam War, you know, started becoming, you know, as I became older, I started becoming much more aware of life, you know, the news and so on and so forth. Then I realized that, hey, there's this thing called Vietnam, and I think, what the hell is Vietnam? You know, so, and then I found out what it was when I got a draft notice. You know, I think I was shit.
That's a
So,
sobering letter to open. Yeah.
yeah, that's a slap in reality.
Yeah.
So I said, "Hey, I'll show Uncle Sam. I'm not going to let him draft me." So I joined the Marine Corps. You know, so
Mhm.
and then by the time I got through my training, you know, I volunteered for 4 years, but I didn't. I ended up not going to Vietnam because by that time, you know, the powers that be, the Paris peace talks, you know, ended
Yeah.
up coming up with a peace agreement. You know, so I had like 3.5 years left on my on my tour. You know, I'm thinking, what the hell am I going to do now? You know, so I ended up, you know, serving, you know, in the Marine Corps, you know, in Washington D.C. and in Europe, you know, and then eventually
Okay.
I got back out and came home, you know. So it was a great life, you know, and I had the opportunity with the GI Bill to go to school and stuff like that. And you know, I mean, things happen for a reason. I happened to to be when I was in the Marine Corps, I happened to meet an active duty FBI agent, you know, in circles
Mhm.
that he get associated with the Marines, you know, somehow.
Mhm.
And I got to know him for about 2 years, and he goes, "Hey, you know," he said, you're going to school, you know, part time." I said, "Yeah, yes, yes, sir." He said, "Hey, I've been watching you," and he said, "Hey, I think you'd be a good candidate to be an FBI agent." And I tell you, I looked at him, you know, like one of those cartoons, like my eyes go, "Whoa!"
Yeah.
I said, "Are you joking? Are you serious?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "With your military background," he said, "and when you finish your 4 year degree," he said, I think you'd be a great candidate." He said, "Here's my card. I'm going to get you an application, and you know, when I get it," he said, I'll bring it to you, and then you make several copies of the application, and then start working on the questions and answers, and you know, and it's, you know, like the background investigation."
Mhm.
And I thought that was like outrageous because back then it was like 12 pages, you know, it's like 12
Yeah.
pages of questions. Now I think it's like 52 pages of questions. You know, so who knows now? It's been so long.
Yeah.
But you know, I just happened to be so blessed that I applied and I got accepted, you know, into the FBI, you know, because and he said, "Hey,
Mhm.
also use me as a reference." So he said, "Okay, shoot,
Yeah.
it can't hurt, you know, to use an FBI agent as a reference, you know." So, but and then went through the academy, and you know, it was interesting because I was a long weapon guy with the Marine Corps. Obviously, came up with the M14 and then transitioned to the M16. I've always been an M14, you know, fan. You know, the M16, you know, it's okay, you know, but I
Yeah.
like that big old, you know, 308. You know?
Mhm.
So, but be that as it may, you know, went through the academy, and then I was assigned to Washington field office out of the academy. So, which was interesting. You know, never been from the big city, you know, and I end up in Washington D.C. with all the you know, all the
Mhm.
monuments, the White House, the Capitol, and stuff like that. So I started working. I was assigned to a bank robbery squad, but you know, we were the young punks. You know, the senior guys worked the bank robberies, and the young guys did all the gopher work. You know, we did. You
Mhm.
know, because it's a huge office,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of administrative minutia that has to be handled. You know, uh, like a lot of times, you know, like when President Reagan was elected
Mhm.
in 1980, his whole cabinet had to be investigated,
Yep.
background checks. So those investigations are assigned to the whole world, you know. So we did the background investigations, and the old guys, the cigar smokers and stuff, did the bank robbery. So I think I did investigations for the Reagan administration for
Mm,
like 6, 8 months. So
yeah,
I never saw a bank. So, but anyway, I mean, I still learned. I learned some
yeah.
things. And I went on. Had saw some good experiences, and then I was transferred over to the terrorism squad. A lot of people probably don't remember, but in the '80s, early '80s, Central America was a big,
Yeah.
big cauldron of issues.
Mhm.
You had the Sandinistas in Nicaragua. You had the El Salvadorians, with the right wing death squads and the left wing death squads, and you
Mhm.
know, death squad, death squad. I mean, it was just incredible. So since I spoke Spanish, I was assigned to the Central American Terrorism Task Force. So and that's what I did for most of the time in Washington. And then I met my wife, and when I was working a case, it ended up going to Miami. So we got married, and then because she was in Miami and I was in Washington D.C., they said, hey, we have to put these two guys in one common household. So they transferred me to Miami in 1985, and that's how I ended up in Miami. Just and I tell you what, though, if you have two diametrically opposed cities, Washington D.C. and Miami, Florida, I got to Miami and I was like, oh, hallelujah, man! This is like tropical heaven. So
Mhm.
I tell you, at the time, Miami had probably still does. I haven't been to Miami in several years, but Miami had a flavor all its own. I mean, it was
Yeah.
just incredible. I mean, it was just words can't describe it. I mean, you had the cocaine cowboys and the
Mhm.
beaches and the sunshine and all all the fraud and stuff. It was like a law enforcement officer's paradise. So
Yeah.
and uh, Liz, since my wife Liz was in the Miami office, she did some lobbying politic for me. She got me assigned to the. She knew the bank robbery supervisor, Gordon McNeil, so she went to him and said, "Hey, my husband's coming down. He's on the bank robbery squad or was on the bank robbery squad at WFO. He'd like to be on the bank robbery squad here, and so on and so forth." And she looked him right in the eye and she goes, "And my husband doesn't have an opinion about nothing." Good old, I keep telling her, good old Liz lied, for me.
Yeah.
She hates it when I say that joke.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I got transferred down and I was on the bank robbery squad. I'll tell you what, that was a great squad though. It's like 18 men, and
Mhm.
there's no racism or sexism there. I mean, it was all
Yeah.
men. I mean, because at
Yeah.
the time, women in the FBI was still kind of a novelty, even though the first female FBI agent came in like in 1972, I believe. So that was like 8 years, that the bureau had to recruit. But at the time, I think there were only like 4 or 5, maybe 6 female agents in Miami. So I
Yeah.
mean, they couldn't be everywhere. So
Right.
we had 18 guys on the squad. It was a good bunch of guys. Had senior guys with 18, 20 years in, had journeyman guys with 10, 12, and then you had all the punks like me with the 5 and 6 years in
Mhm.
service. So it was a great squad. Had bank robberies, fugitives, kidnappings. I mean, that
Yeah.
was heaven. I mean, that was just rock and roll. I mean, every single day was something new.
Mhm.
Running and gunning, speeding someplace, responding to a bank robbery or armored truck robbery. So, I think I acclimated pretty well to the squad. And then right about like August of 1985, something unusual was happening because we the squad, I mean, everybody has when you work in a certain area, it's like working a beat. You work a
Yeah.
beat, a neighborhood, you get to know everything. Okay, hey, this is unusual. This guy shouldn't be open at 9 o'clock in the evening. Or hey,
Mhm.
this is normal, it's a restaurant, you get to learn the pattern. So in Miami, at the time we had 2 active robber gangs. We call them very simply the black gang and the Hispanic gang, the Cuban gang.
Mhm.
Okay. And of course, then on top of that, you had your average run-of-the-mill garden variety independent bank robber. Okay, so you always had some bank robber coming in from from out of left
Mhm.
field. So, but we had two major gangs that we were working on, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere comes this third group. It's like, what in the heck? Who are these guys? And the best way I can describe them, based on what in 1985 terms would be, they were like survivalists. Like that's when the survivalists first started coming up.
Mhm.
The militia groups, but the militia was very extreme. The survivalists were more, like campers, like
Yeah.
armed campers. So they were somewhere in between. So it became obvious that, or pretty obvious that they had some military background. And the first indication that we had that something was odd, was the very first robbery that we can attribute to these two guys was at a steak and ale restaurant in the middle of the day, like noon, 12 noon, 12:30. They attacked an armored truck delivery courier and robbed him at gunpoint, and they only got about $8,000, because he had a little small, like an
Mhm.
envelope-sized bag as opposed to one of those big money bags, So they hit him on the head and said, "Hey, tell your buddy to open the back door of the armored truck," and they have orders not to do that, So when they walked him over with a gun in his ear and said, "Hey," they showed the driver, "Hey, we got your buddy here, open the door." The policy, armored truck policy is to not open the door. He put
Yeah.
the truck in drive and drove away. So it's like, I wouldn't want to be the guy like standing there like, "Oh God, help me."
Yeah.
So anyway, they hit him on the back of the head, and then one of the two had an assault rifle. Opens up on the back of the truck, and he fired like 14, 15 rounds at the back of the truck. Of course, it's armored, so nothing can happen. So they hit the guy in the head, the courier, and they ran to a car, jumped in the car, and sped away out of the parking lot. And when they're leaving the parking lot, for some reason, they threw out two smoke grenades out of the car. It's like, you know, that was just bizarro. It's like
Yeah.
you drop a smoke grenade here, but you're speeding away at 40 miles an hour. What good does it do? So,
Mhm.
but needless to say, that was an unusual robbery. So two smoke grenades were like, what the
Yeah.
hell? So so anyway, we showed up and we interviewed the two couriers and witnesses, and we said, well, this is odd. So, and then like within a week, you know, we suspected it was the same gang because there was another robbery at a grocery store, and man, they in the middle of the day. Thank God that the security guards, the couriers, only had 6 shots apiece because the three guards fired all 6 shots. That's 18 rounds, and the band guys fired about 12. So you had a total of 30 rounds fired in a shopping center in front of a grocery store, like a Safeway or a Giant or Winn Dixie, in
Mhm.
front of one of those grocery stores with women and children coming out. 30 shots were fired between 5 people, and only one guard was hit.
Mhm.
It's like amazing, absolutely amazing. But again,
Yeah.
an unusual robbery. I mean, it's like, what the hell, So, but you know what though? On a more serious note, the guard that was shot, you know, I tell people, I said, hey, do you believe in luck? And I say, well, some people say no, some people say yes. For the people that say no, okay. If you had a choice between being lucky and unlucky, which would you rather be? I'd rather
Yeah.
be lucky, obviously. So, but anyway, there's a saying in the Bible, a biblical saying, Ecclesiastes 9:11. It states that the race is not always to the swift, nor the battle to the strong. And it goes on, and it says, but time and chance happens to us all. Okay, and then this is one of those cases where time and chance. The guard that was shot in the legs. Okay, and he was an older gentleman like me. He was, retired. He was probably doing this as a retirement job. He was shot in the leg, and he never. He was sent to the hospital. He never came out of the hospital. He had complications, from the
Mhm.
from the wound, and then he was older and developed pneumonia, and eventually he died. So
Mhm.
it's just one of those things. But that was the first confirmed, homicide attributed to these people. So
Yeah.
so but obviously we didn't know that at the time, because he would linger on for months and then eventually he would die from his complications, So then the next robbery is an attempted robbery. I think it was the next day, I believe, of adults restaurant, and that was a fiasco. Again, they didn't get any money. Only 4 or 5 shots were exchanged, during that robbery, So then, these
Only
guys,
4 or 5.
and the scheme of 30 and
Yeah.
15 shots, everything's relative,
Yeah.
So, you and I both know that even one shot is not a good thing.
Yeah.
Even one single shot is bad.
Yeah, but boss, this time we only fired 4 times.
Yeah, we only
That's-
4 shots, boss. I guess when you put it in those terms, it is kind of dumb, But so then the next thing that happened was you had there was a day, when they hit two banks. One bank was a walk-up teller, and they only got $10,000 from the teller. She went from the main building to the teller island. That's way before they had the tunnels underneath
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So they only got $10,000, and we said, okay, we responded to that, and then like 90 minutes later, like noon, we got a call, saying there was a big bank robbery, like 10 blocks away. Okay, and again, they only fired 1 shot, but it was typical, like Miami Vice or like the movie Heat. You walk into a bank, it's full of people. They had like 25, 30 people in the bank. One of the bad guys goes and boom, fires around in the air. Everybody on the floor, it's like, that'll get your attention,
Mhm.
So everybody goes down. They went in, they went behind the tellers, and they pulled out 2 big bags of Wells Fargo bags, and then they ran out of the bank. I think they got something like $50,000 in that robbery. So that was pretty good. So they had 2 robberies in one day. So again, only 1 shot fired. so then they had a little hiatus. Well, let me take a step back. The robberies that I'm telling you about are all confirmed robberies that are attributed to these 2 bank robbers, which ended up being Platt and Maddox.
Right.
The one of the guys was named Platt, and the other one was named Maddox.
Mhm.
And the God, I forgot what I was going to say.
So those robberies were all attributed to them.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Those robberies were all attributed to them. But from an investigative standpoint, we had a total of about 14 or 15 robberies with the same MO. Okay,
Yeah.
the same modus operandi.
Mhm.
Okay, these robberies that I'm speaking about are positively linked to these 2 guys through forensics.
Right.
Shell casings or witnesses or wound ballistics and everything else, So those are the only cases that probably, if we had gone to trial, would have been used against them. All the other 10 cases, the balance of the 10 cases was all MO, no real hard evidence, So even though there was a 6-week period where we didn't have any confirmed robberies, there was robberies going on. So the next robbery happened on January 10th in 1986, and again, one of those harsh robberies. Armored truck robbery. Armored truck was making a delivery. Out of the blue, somebody just walks up behind him, shoots him in the legs. He goes down. They go in and grab a bunch of money bags, and they take off. But before he takes off, the other guy, one of them had a shotgun, the other one had the assault rifle. The guy with the assault rifle walks up to the guard who's on the ground, face down, and puts 2 rounds in his back.
Mhm.
Okay, pop, pop, just a double tap, and time and chance. Amazingly, that security guard shot with a shotgun in the legs, and then 2 shots with a .223 caliber in the back, survived. Okay, and you think, well, how is that possible? The bank guard, the other guard, was shot in the legs with a shotgun pellets, and this guy shot in the back twice with an assault rifle. He survives. Sometimes you just can't figure it out. But again, time and chance. Time and chance happens. So at that robbery, we somebody followed them. after the robbery and watched them change cars at a Burger King nearby. And that's when we recovered a gold-colored Monte Carlo. And that's a oh, excuse me. That's the first time that I became aware of an individual by the name of Emilio Brielle, because his the vehicle was registered to the Brielle family, you know. So, and unfortunately, the Brielle family had registered a missing persons report because their son had gone out target practice in the Everglades and never came back. You know, so since we recovered the car, we knew, hey, there's these guys are probably going to be looking for another robbery car. So the next incident that happened, that was January. The next incident that happened was in March. Okay. So Jose Calazo happened to be target practicing out in the Everglades, and just a routine day, you know. He became a witness. He looked over and says, hey, he sees another car pulling up into the shooting area. And it was a white pickup truck with two guys in it. He waves at them, and they wave back. So he continues shooting his .22 rifle. And next thing you know, like a few minutes later, he says he kind of sensed something behind him, and he looks, and there's two guys behind him, you know, one with an assault rifle, one with a handgun. And they said, hey, no, give us your guns, give us your car, give us your wallet, so on. He goes, hey, no problems, man, comply. He gave it to him. And then he said, he got a bad feeling. This is when they said, hey, turn around and walk towards that lake. You know, you know, what does that tell you? You know,
Yeah.
like, oh God, are we going swimming, Dad? You know, no,
Yeah.
you're going swimming, you know. So he said he got a very bad feeling, you know. So he said he was kind of dragging his feet, you know, and the guy with the handgun was poking him in the back and trying to encourage him to walk faster. And then he did one of those kung fu moves, you know, like, you know, you sweep the gun off your body, you know, you turn your body. And they started fighting over the gun, you know, and when they're fighting over the gun, the young man by the name of Jose Calazo was shot through the hand, and then he was shot through the shoulder, and then shot in the face, you know. So it's just an amazing incident of survival, you know. So I tell people, I said, hey, you shoot somebody in the face, that's 99 times out of 100, that's a killing shot, you know. So this guy, the guy who shot him, probably thought, hey, I shot him in the face. He's 99% dead. So he left him there, and they grabbed his stuff, they grabbed his car, grabbed his rifle and everything else, and they drove away. And Jose Calazo, you know, survived. He had to make a decision. Hey, do I stay here and survive and die, or do I try to help myself? You know, so he chose to try to survive. You know, he had to walk like almost a mile from where he was to the road, the real road where he could get assistance. You know, and he walked out, and some tourists, you know, driving by stopped to help him, and he became our first live witness. You know, so we got a composite photo composite from him. You know, we got the description of the white pickup truck, no tag, just the truck, and a description of his car. You know, that sets up the case in March for what happened in April. So like a week.
Before we move on to that, I just want to interject here. For everyone who screams that open carry, you know, does anything to deter crime, here we have two instances of people out actively engaged in target shooting who are robbed, and one murder, one attempt murder. For a real evil person, the fact that you've got a firearm or weapon, is it going to be?
I tell you what, though, I mean, that's a good point, Lee, because, you know, I hadn't really considered that. Two people, armed people that were attacked. Okay, they had guns in their hands. Okay, and they were attacked. Okay, I mean, granted, they were both ambushed from behind, but still, though, I mean, it's like, wow, you know, I hadn't really considered that. That's a good point. But Calazo survived. He was very lucky. So about a week later, at the Barnett Bank at 136th Street, South Dixie Highway, there was another robbery. We had a law enforcement witness who was driving up to cash a check, and he says when he's pulling up, he sees two males running out of the bank wearing ski masks, gloves, and carrying long barrel weapons. So he said, hey, you know, he hunkered down, became a good witness. You know, I mean,
Mhm.
I consider myself to be a Clint Eastwood, but a handgun against two guys with rifles, nah,
Yeah.
I think I'm going to be a good witness, just kind of hunt me down behind that dashboard.
Yeah.
So that's what he did, and you know what? He verified the tag on the car. It was Kalas's car.
Mhm.
So we had to confirm, a confirmation that these guys were the bank robbers. So that sets the stage up. Okay, that happened in the middle of March. So Gordon McNeil had been had gone to firearms training on April 10th, on Thursday. He was out there with Ben Grogan, and he was kicking the case around with Ben. Said, "Hey Ben, why don't we set up a surveillance tomorrow?" And Ben said, "Sure, Gordon. I mean, what's up and what do you know?" And Gordon told Ben and said, "Hey Ben, it's been 3 weeks since this guy's hit. Okay, the last time they hit, they only got $8,000, whereas the previous hits had been $40,000, $50,000. The last robbery 3 weeks ago was only $8,000." He said, "And tomorrow, maybe some of your listeners won't know this term, but tomorrow is payday Friday." Okay. I mean, for us old timers, that means something.
Mhm.
So he said, "Tomorrow's payday Friday. It's been 3 weeks, and they only got $8,000 last time." He says, "I'm telling you, I have a hunch these guys are going to hit tomorrow. I think they're due." And that is what precipitated the surveillance. It's called intuitive policing. Okay,
Mhm.
your intuition, your experience, your evidence. It says, "Hey, let's run a surveillance." So Ben calls the office. I was in the office on the squad at the time, and then call comes in and says, "Hey, we're going to run a surveillance tomorrow morning. Try to see how many guys can help us. Pass the word around. Have them be in the office at 7, and then we'll stage in Southwest Miami." So that's how the case started. And that no informant, no tip, no nothing. It was just a hunch. So it. I mean, fate, time and chance, one of those things. So
Yeah. For all of you in the audience that are under the age of 30, there used to be these things called paychecks, and they actually gave them to you on paper, like every other Friday or the last Friday of the month or whatever. And you actually had to physically take that paycheck to a bank,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
the banks will be flush with cash on those days, because when
Yeah,
people would go in and deposit their check, they would
yeah,
actually get cash back,
yeah,
because you didn't have these things called debit cards back then,
yeah.
or you
No,
couldn't
no, no,
you couldn't pay with your cell phone, because cell phones weren't a common thing
no.
at the time,
I
and
didn't
people
even have
actually
them.
walked around with cash money. So that's what he's talking
Yeah,
about, payday Friday.
yeah, exactly. No. Could
Yeah.
we uh, could we take a time out, Lee?
Sure, sure.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt.
All right, and we're back.
Yes, sir. So the next day, April 11th, 14 agents, no, sorry, 11 agents from the squad showed up, and then we had corralled 3 agents from the Homestead RA to help us. Homestead is, I don't know, 30 miles south of Miami. So we had a total of 14 agents for the surveillance, and we just divvied up the agents, in 4 main locations where I think every location that we were surveilling had been robbed at least one time before. So we figured, hey, there's only so many banks down there. There's a lot of businesses, but only so many banks. So the idea was to have a static surveillance, and then maybe also a rolling surveillance going back and forth. And we were looking for the stolen Monte Carlo and any white pickup truck that you might see with 2 guys in it. So
Yeah.
that was the case. So honestly, I have to look people in the eye right here and say, hey, I thought the probability of these 2 guys showing up was like 10%,
Mhm.
at best. Okay, because we had nothing.
Yep.
We had 0. It was just literally a hunch, and I'm thinking, well, you know what? I got
Yeah.
nothing better to do. I'll come out here and help the squad. And
Yeah.
I don't want to be labeled a slacker or something like that. So I was out there, but I honestly, truly,
Yeah.
didn't think anything was going to happen. And I tell people that's called complacency, and it wasn't negligence, but it was, hey, I'm
Yeah.
out here, nothing will happen. It's kind of like, what's complacency? Well, I always do it this way, or nothing ever happens. That's
Mhm.
complacency. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
nothing ever happens here. Don't worry about it. Or not, I always do it this way. This is the way we're gonna know.
Mhm.
That's you get into a rut, you get into, that's
Yeah.
what complacency is. So I honestly didn't expect anything to happen. And boy, was I mistaken at about
Right.
9:25 in the morning, when Ben Grogan calls out on the radio, attention all units, we're behind a black vehicle, two-door, Florida tag NTJ 891. I'm thinking, I could not believe it. I was like, wow.
Mhm.
My partner, John Hanley, had already put the car in gear. And when Ben called out, he was already 6 blocks north of it. We were at the northernmost spot on the surveillance. He was already 6 blocks north of us. He had gone
Mhm.
6 blocks, to try to catch. He was probably playing catch up, trying to verify the tag. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until he got to 130th Street that he verified the tag. So, and then after that, it wasn't a high speed chase. I mean, there were some high speeds catching up,
Right.
but once we caught up, it was like just a regular road. You drive, on a city highway, city street, But when they went off the highway and went onto the residential roads, man, it became like, whoa, this is not good. Everything went to like 10, 15 miles an hour. You had 4 cars driving, bumper to bumper, 10 or 15 miles an hour. They knew something was up. So my biggest fear at the time was they kind of went around in a big circle. They went from South Dixie Highway, which is US 1. They went
Mhm.
east. They made a circle and a circle back to the west. And I thought they were going to get back on US 1. My biggest concern was that we were going to get involved in a running gun battle on US 1 on the highway. Okay,
Yeah.
because these guys had a propensity to shoot. Out of the 6 robberies they had, that we confirmed were linked to them, 5 involved shootings of
Mhm.
some kind. Okay, so I'm thinking, wow, these guys, they will not
Right.
be reluctant to fire, use civilians as a shield. That's way before human shields became a
Mhm.
thing. But I had visions of them running in and out of traffic, using other cars as cover, trying to get away. So, and amazingly, they didn't do that. They turned south on a residential road. And that was amazing. I mean, we were really lucky in that respect, because there was a school about 3 blocks to the east, and then there was like another church complex farther south. It could have been disastrous, but you know,
Yeah.
I guess luck turned in our favor. So we're headed down 82nd Avenue, and then we stopped going from 5 and 10 miles an hour, and then the RPM started going up because Ben put the police light on the dash, hit the siren, and then all bets are off. It just became a drag race with the
Mhm.
crashing and banging and stuff. We're trying to force them into a a dirt area, like a, what do you call it, a medium,
Mhm.
or
Median.
the
Yeah.
side of the side of the road,
Yeah.
up against the wall. Obviously, they weren't cooperating. They
Right.
were they were trying to escape. So,
Right.
but eventually, we ended up crashing into some civilian cars at 82nd Avenue and 120th Street. 122nd Street, and then that's the setup for the shootout. You know, that duplex right there.
Uh-huh.
Now the rest of it's kind of complicated. I don't know if you want to ask me individual questions or.
Um, well, let's go over what firearms were the each agent carrying.
Okay, that's a good question because I've been asked, why aren't you carrying a 44 Magnum? It's like, well, you know what though, guys, there's these things called regulations,
Regulations.
rules and regulations, and I tell people, I said, hey, I was carrying everything that I was legally authorized to carry. And
Mhm.
at that time, FBI agents were only authorized to carry 38 caliber revolvers. Okay, and we could only carry 12 gauge shotguns. Okay, you could carry any variety of model of 38. You could carry a Model 60, a Model 19, a Model 10, all different types of models. Smith and Wesson 38 caliber revolvers, but I could not carry anything different. I could only carry a Remington 12 gauge shotgun. Now we had 5 SWAT agents with us, and they were trained to a higher standard. They were authorized to carry semi-automatic high capacity pistols. They were in 9mm caliber. And then the SWAT guys, again, there's 5 of them there. One of them had an M16, the other one had an MP5, and then the rest of the agents had 12 gauge shotguns each. Okay. But as it turns out, there's that time and chance again. None of the heavy weapons, especially the M16, none of them showed up to the shootout in time because they were in a different location during the surveillance. They were farther south in the line, the line of assignments. Okay, so by the time they actually got to the shooting was over. So let me take a step back.
Sure.
From the time Ben said attention all units to the time he said felony car stop, 3 minutes. Okay, that's as much time as you had to formulate a plan. Okay, and it's very, very dynamic because I mean you're moving in front of a shopping center, you're moving in front of a park, you're moving in front of a post office. Okay, they make a turn. Okay, you're in a residential area, so you're trying to formulate a plan and you're trying to rally troops to assist you. So I mean you're planning, and things keep changing. But when he said felony car stop, that was a total of 3 minutes, And I tell people, especially in the FBI, I said, guys, the FBI has changed. You cannot do anything anymore without an ops plan.
Right.
Okay, you got to have, and I'm sure PDs are the same way now. You have to have an ops plan. And I tell them, I say, hey, guys, back in the old days, man, your ops plan was like, hey, you get a phone call, you got 30 seconds to do something. Okay, and in this case, we had 3 minutes to formulate an ops plan. And a lot of people either don't know or seem to forget that we worked hand in glove with Metro-Dade County PD. Some of our units had Metro radios in them, so we were calling Metro for backup. I mean, definitely calling for. I mean, it's kind of like that line in the movie The Terminator 2, when they said, "Hey, how many cops are out there?" And he says, "I think all of them." That's what we were doing. It was call for backup. How many do you want? Bring them all.
Everybody. Yeah. And so, wake up night shift and get them here too. Yeah.
So, but we were just calling, calling for backup. So, but the agent with the radio, he's in a car by himself. He's got an FBI radio on one hand. He's got a Metro radio in the other, and he's trying to drive at high speed. Okay. So it's not the best plan. You know what I'm saying? So he vectored the police in as best he could. Plus, our lack of communication, because we were trying to maintain radio discipline. I wanted to say something, but I didn't because Ben was the eye. Ben was the eye. He was the case agent. And I was just leaving it up to Ben. It's like, hey, I even tried to urge him. I made, when I think back on it, I think they would call it snarky. I kept trying to get him to say something. I said, hey, Ben, I'm right behind you. Give me a cross street, give me a cross street so you can tell the other guys where we are,
Yeah.
And he responded to that, but that he was dead silent because he was focused on the threat, So anyway, Metro was called, Metro responded, but, obviously trying to vector them in exactly to where we were because once Ben said felony car stop, all communication stopped. Everybody was focusing on driving and crashing the cars and cars spinning and doing everything like it's like a roller derby. I mean, or what do you call those crash those crash derbies?
Demolition derbies.
Demolition derbies. Yeah. So I mean, it's all radio talk stopped at that point. So. But Metro was called, and eventually Metro did respond. They were actually, set up a perimeter and the whole thing. So everything was good. But the agents, only the SWAT agents had the exotic weapons, the 9mm, the M16, and the MP5. So
Do I remember correctly that one of the guys that had either the M16 or the MP5 had gotten out of his car and was like trying to interview a witness from a previous
no, you know
robbery?
what happened?
Uh,
That's you've got a good memory.
uh,
There were 3 incidents that happened, time and chance.
uh,
Okay, at my location, 130th Street, there was 3 agents there. Steve Warner, he said, "Hey guys, I'm going to go in and check with the bank manager." So he goes in and checks the door, and the bank's closed. It's 9 o'clock, and he knocked on the door, and they came there, "Sir, the bank doesn't open till 9:30." So I mean, that was unusual, because most banks
mhm,
opened at 9. This bank opened
mhm,
at 9:30. So he showed him his credits. He said, "Hey, we're the FBI. We're doing a surveillance here. Can I talk to the bank manager?" And they said no. So he said, "Okay." So he gets back in his car. He tells us, "Hey, I'm back in the car." He said the bank manager wouldn't talk to us. So he said, "Hey, I'm fine. I'm going to go gas up, before we start, getting heavy into the day." So he
mhm,
runs off to gas up, gets to the gas station, says, "Hey, I'm gonna be off the air." There's a code sign for that.
mhm,
And as soon as he goes off the air, we get a call from the office, and the office says, "Hey, unit, whatever his number was, I forget what it was, unit 12." He said, "Come in." And I knew unit 12, so I said,
mhm,
"Hey, this is unit 88. Unit
mhm,
12 is, out of service. What do you need?" And the office said, "Hey, the bank manager called the office to verify unit 12's Steve's employment." So we verified it. So now the bank manager wants to talk to Steve. So when he comes back in service, can you tell him to go back to the bank?
mhm,
So we said, "Okay, I'll take care of it." So Steve comes back on the air, said, "Hey, Steve, uh, the bank manager verified your employment, blah, blah, blah. She wants to talk to you now." She goes, "Oh, okay." So he goes back to the bank. He says, "I'm at the bank. I'm out of service." He turns the car off and goes in. That was at my location. At the location south of me, 136th Street, the agent with the MP5 notifies his little group, says, "Hey, listen, I need to go to the bathroom. I need uh, I'll be 10-7. I'm going to go into this McDonald's or whatever."
mhm,
About, I don't know, 30 seconds later, in a different part of the surveillance, Bobby Ross, the agent with the M16, tells these guys, he says, "Hey, man, I have to go make a library stop. I'll be out." And they said, "Okay." So he goes out to the bathroom. Terry goes out to the bathroom, and Steve is out talking to the bank manager. Okay, the 2 guys with the heaviest armed agents are in the bathroom,
mhm,
and then Steve Warner had a 12 gauge shotgun in his car. So I mean, 3 separate locations, 3 separate reasons for
mhm.
uh, being out of service. Time and chance happen. So
Right. Um, do you want to get into the backgrounds of the two bad guys, or we want to leave them dead?
no, I mean, right off the top of my head,
Mm,
one was Michael Lee Platt, and
mhm,
the other one was William R. Maddox. Okay, they were both my age at the time. The one was born in 51, the other one was born in 53, which is my
mhm,
generation. They were both military guys. One, I think it was Maddox, served in the Marine Corps for a couple of years, and then he got out, and then he joined the Army for 4 years. That's where he met his buddy Platt, and they were 101st Airborne. They were trained in the 101st Airborne, and I always tell people, I say, "Hey guys, they weren't slouches."
right.
Okay, 101st Airborne is that's a real deal, you know.
Yeah.
you know, so they were well trained. Obviously,
Mhm,
parajumpers or paratroopers or whatever I don't know whether they're special forces, but
right.
101st Airborne, they're definitely hard combat people.
Right.
So neither one of them served in Vietnam, so they had no combat experience. So but they were buddies. They served together for almost 4 years, and then Maddox. I'm trying to figure out who got out first. I think they got out about the same time. So they went their separate ways afterwards. Maddox went to Ohio with his wife's family, and Platt went to Miami with his wife's family, and they were separated. For 3 or 4 years, but they kept in touch.
Mhm.
And then Maddox's wife dies of mysterious causes in Ohio. That happened about I think it was like 1984. Somebody's slashed her throat, almost cut her head off, and stabbed her 15 times. Mysterious circumstances. So and of course, Maddox had an airtight alibi.
Of course.
His in-laws, he had called his father-in-law over to help move a piece of furniture that he said he was having difficulty with. And when his wife's father was, when the father-in-law was interviewed by the cops, they said he was a little suspicious. Why would he call me to move a piece of furniture that he could easily have moved himself? It was just odd, it's like, hey, can you help me move this chair?
Yeah.
It's one thing to say, hey, can you help me move this couch?
Yeah.
That's one thing, but can you help me move this chair? So he had a witness that he was home. So
Mhm.
which the father-in-law thought was suspicious, but no, I mean, somebody butchered his wife, man. I mean, really just like slashed her bad, so. And then after that, he was free, I guess. He sold their property, took his child, and moved to Miami to be with his buddy, Platt. And like a year later, Platt's wife commits suicide under mysterious circumstances, so. If you know anything about suicide in women, this lady who's a petite, like 5'2", committed suicide by sticking a shotgun in her mouth and pulled the trigger. It's like, yeah, I think most women don't want to do that.
No.
You just
Yeah.
explode your head up. It's
Yeah.
like most, even in death, women are vain, aren't they?
Yeah.
I know I'm going to get calls on that. I didn't mean that
Yeah.
that way, but
Yeah.
it was just odd that a woman sticks a shotgun in her mouth
Yeah.
and kills herself.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. So.
Right.
So Metro Dade always thought that was suspicious as hell, but they
Yeah.
couldn't prove. I mean, they did the residue test on Platt's hands. No,
Yeah.
nothing. No fingerprints on the gun. It's like it was only her prints. It's just weird.
Yeah.
So anyway, they started a new life with new girlfriends and stuff. So we speculate that they were having trouble making ends meet. So that's
Yeah.
when they got into robbery. And I tell people, I say, hey, what a better cover in Miami, Florida, than to have a lawn service. All you do is get those magnetic signs, put them on your door, and you're a lawn service. These guys never did lawns.
Yeah.
Maybe they did a couple, to start, but the rest of the time they were just, what a perfect cover. You're driving around neighborhoods.
Yeah.
You're driving around, with a lawn service. You got a couple of old lawnmowers in the back of your pickup truck. You can drive anywhere.
Yeah.
Just a routine thing, so. And we speculate that they were just having trouble making ends meet, and they got into robbery.
Right. All right. So we're on this side street, and the bumper cars has taken place, and we've come to a stop.
Yep.
And that's when the firefight begins.
It started pretty much as soon as the car stopped,
Right.
Gordon McNeil jumps out of his car. Ben Grogan jumps out of his car. Ben is directly behind the stolen Monte Carlo, and Gordon is off to the driver's side. They both jump out and they're yelling, FBI, police, come out with your hands up. Their response was pop, 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 pow.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of that
Yeah.
movie, The Gladiator.
Yeah.
In the beginning of the movie, they say no. When the messenger comes back without his head,
Yeah.
they say no. So
Yeah.
they said
Yeah.
no too.
Yeah.
When they
I
open fire.
Yeah, I want to back up for 1 second here. As the cars are still moving, I seem to recall something in your presentation, um, where one of the bad guys was pointing a weapon at you, and one of the FBI agents ran the car, and that's what's kept him from being able to
That's
shoot.
true. During
Uh,
the sequence of the chase and the crashing, the car I was in, John Hanlon was driving, and I'm the passenger. Is like this with this is the stolen Monte Carlo.
mhm.
Maddox is driving and Platt's passenger. I actually got, I was so close to him, if the windows had not been rolled up, I could have touched him with my right hand. That's how close we were. And I'm glaring at him, he's glaring at me, and I'm trying to get the shotgun up from between my legs, but it was way too long, so
Mhm.
I got tunnel vision up to the driver's face. Okay. And I didn't see anything else past him. So at that point, unbeknownst to me, the passenger in the stolen Monte Carlo, Platt, had the assault rifle, the Mini 14, came up like this, and he goes in this fashion past the driver's head and is aiming the assault rifle at me. I never saw it because I'm tunnel vision into the driver. Richard Manauzi, who was behind the Monte Carlo, saw that, and he goes, "Oh crap! I need to take their attention off of Ed and John,
Mhm.
and focus it somewhere else." So he rams him from behind. That's when he just slammed him, and he propelled the car forward, and we lost all contact with the car. So we skidded, out of control and hit a wall.
All right. Um, I guess now would be a good time to mention your book that gives a very detailed explanation of
Mhm.
everything that takes place in the gunfight.
Right.
Mention your book and where people can
Oh,
find
okay.
that.
It's a FBI Miami Firefight. 5 minutes to change the bureau.
Mhm.
And people say, "Well, why did you write the book?" I said, "Well, I wrote the book for several reasons. Number one, it's a pretty damn interesting story. It's an
Mhm.
interesting case." Okay.
Yeah.
And the second reason, or maybe the first reason I wrote it, is because back after the incident happened, there was so much misinformation out there.
Mhm.
So many people had so many wrong details that it was like maddening. I mean, I actually would have to go to. I actually went to police conferences starting in 1990, and I would give the actual facts of the investigation as I knew them from the crime
Mhm.
scene and from my being there. And people said, "No, no, that's not the way it happened." I said, "Dude, I was there.
Yeah.
No, you guys had a tip and you weren't prepared. You, you should have been prepared." I'm
Yeah.
saying, we had no tip. There was no tip. So I fought the battle for like 10 years. I'm thinking,
Yeah.
because just to set the record straight, but I'm thinking, man, there's a lot of misinformation out there. So I decided to write the book. So,
Uh,
and it took me. I actually wrote the book when I retired in '04, but nobody would publish it. A lot of I don't know, publishing homes or publishing houses or
mhm.
whatever they call themselves. I got rejected left and right. So I said, I
Huh.
put it on the back burner, and then I brought it back, and then nobody would touch it. I'm thinking, okay, so I'll self-publish. So that's how I ended up, getting the book out there. But any any publicity was good. Is good
Right.
because it'll help me get the word out. So,
Right.
but you can get my book, FBI Miami Firefight,
Uh,
um, through my website,
sure.
www.edmireles.com, or through
Sure.
Amazon. So,
Sure.
but it's available.
Yeah, I'll put a link to it in the show notes and when we put it out online. Um, and because I know there's going to be all sorts of questions that people that are listening to this have that we might not get into.
Oh
So
no, I mean,
I wanted to bring up the
no,
book
I
so that
mean,
people, yeah,
if we go through the whole story in detail, this will be a 4-hour podcast.
right,
So,
right,
but that's why I wrote the book.
right.
Because the book keeps it very succinct, very
Hmm.
um, you know tight. So
A couple of things I do want to ask about specifically. I remember from your presentation where you talked about how your memory was you fired 4 rounds from the shotgun,
right, correct,
but the evidence indicates you fired 5.
correct.
Did you
And
go into
that
that?
was brought to my attention, by a prosecutor. Say, "Hey, wait a minute, you say you only fired 4 shots?" I said, "Yeah." He said, so he showed me a crime scene photo. He says, "There's 5 shell casings here." I said, "Oh, okay." And I tell people, especially officers, I say, "Hey,
Mhm.
there is a thing out there called traumatic amnesia.
Yep.
People that have car crashes, boom, they get knocked silly, or
Mhm.
people that get knocked unconscious, either on purpose or by accident. You either fall or someone hits you. Um, if you've ever interviewed anybody who's had head trauma like that, you'll know right away.
Yeah.
Because some people say, "Hey, man, I don't know what happened 15 minutes before the incident. I can't tell you what I did or where I was or what happened."
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with me. After I was shot, I was shot in the left arm. I was shot right through here, and then I also took a grazing head wound here onto to the forehead. It just went like this.
Yeah.
So that I'm assuming it was that, and just the supersonic blast. It deafened me. I mean, I couldn't hear anything, and all I heard was a ringing in my ears. So I mean, to say that this round didn't ring my bell,
Yeah.
it did ring my bell. So I attribute it to that hit, that injury, that I can't remember. I can remember everything else
Yeah.
almost,
Yeah.
but I cannot. I mean, it's pretty significant that you fire a shotgun
Yeah.
blast and you don't remember that.
Yeah.
So,
Funny you may bring up the traumatic amnesia. I attended Force Science Institute's force analysis class several years ago, and
mhm.
they're going through all the, your recall might not be perfect, and they're giving all the reasons why and everything like that. And I raised my hand, and I forget which presenter was up at the time, and he's like, "Yesterday, asked a question." I said, "How would all this apply to sexual assault victims?" And he kind of sat there for a second, leaned back. It was all the same things would apply to a sexual assault victim.
Mhm.
And so that's one of the things that's kind of haunted me over the years, is how many rape cases haven't been prosecuted or rapists were acquitted because the victim is actually telling the truth as they remember it, but it doesn't match up with physical evidence.
Yeah.
And it's shown, oh, the victim's not credible, et cetera. And that has just always bothered me
Well,
since
you know
taking
what,
that class.
and that's a very, very, very good question, very valid point. Because if you've been around people that have been traumatized, a car crash can be a trauma.
Mhm.
Okay, an assault can be a trauma. A rape can be trauma. A gunshot can be a trauma. Anything that affects you, physically and mentally, can have an effect on your memory. There's no
Yeah,
doubt.
right.
I don't know how much time we have,
We've got as
but
much time as you want.
I want to tell you a story about a friend of
Sure.
mine. I was in Washington field office, and I was assigned to a squad on the 12th floor. And I usually came in at 6 in the morning. And I came in one morning. And there's somebody sitting at a desk next to mine, which used to be empty. And I'm thinking, I said, I know this guy. I said, Don, what are you doing here? He said, Hey, Ed. He said, I just got transferred in from Johnson City, Tennessee, or wherever the heck he was, or Missouri or something.
Yeah.
I said, well, congratulations. He says, what brings you here? And he just kind of made light of it, But then as time went on, he told me why he was transferred. He was transferred because as a disciplinary transfer. And I said, what? He said, what happened? He said he and his partner show up at a fugitive's house, a parent's house, and they get out of their car. They park right in front of the house, which is a no-no now. So the guy get on the front door side, gets out of the house, and he starts taking incoming gunfire from the house. So he runs over behind the car. The driver gets out. One of them is behind the engine block. The other guy is behind the trunk, and they're exchanging fire. Okay, everything's going pretty smoothly, other than the shooting.
Right. Yeah.
So my friend Don said, he was involved in the gunfight. And, at the end, the guy, I don't know whether he was wounded or his parents talked him, say, hey, stop shooting, you idiot, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it ended, they called for backup. The sheriff shows up and they arrested, the fugitive, So internal affairs, FBI internal affairs comes over to investigate. They had the local PD investigate, but then internal affairs comes in to follow up. As we like to say in the FBI, internal affairs comes in to bayonet the wounded.
Yeah. The circular firing squad forms here. Yeah.
So they asked my friend Don. He said, how many shots did you fire? And he said, I fired 3 shots, sir. And he said, no, say again? He said, I fired 3 shots. So they left the room, they conferred, it's like, they came back in and said, okay, maybe you didn't understand the question. How many shots did you fire at this gunfight, at this address, at this time? He says, I fired 3 shots, sir. So they said, we don't believe you. And he goes, what do you mean you don't believe me? So they pulled out a photograph and they had a forensics photo. And on his side of the car, there were 12 shell casings, 38 caliber shell casings. He fired 12 shots, reloaded an additional 6 shots into his revolver, and came up to address the target for the 3rd time. And he says that, of course, the internal affairs, they're sharpening their bayonets. They're saying, you're lying. Why are you lying to us? Here's the evidence, 12 shell casing. You're telling us 3. You're a liar. You're a liar. He said, hey, I remember firing 3 shots.
Yeah.
Okay, so they said, nah, you're a liar. So they transferred him from where he was to Washington field office so he could be next to headquarters so they could keep an eye on him, something, I don't know. So, and then he said, hey, you know what? He thought about it. And he goes, you know what? When I asked my buddy, my partner, he said, how many shots did you fire? He said, I fired 3 shots. Okay. And for some reason, when he was shooting, your fight or flight response, does weird things to your vision and your hearing and stuff. He probably didn't hear a single shot he fired, but yet he heard his partner fired 3 shots. Those 3 shots registered in his brain.
Yep.
So he said, I fired 3 shots. Okay, he never realized that he fired 6, dumped, loaded 6, fired 6, dumped, and then came up and loaded 6 more. So, and of course, OPR, the bayonet, the wounded bayoneting people, they said, "Oh, you're lying, pal." So they transferred him and his family to Washington. And that cued something in my brain. I'm thinking, why did this happen? I mean, how did this, and after it happened to me, I'm thinking, holy cow, man, there's a lot more out there that people don't realize, trauma.
Yeah.
And you raise a valid point. What about all these rape victims, and stuff like that, that, just people either forget information or it doesn't register, who knows what the heck, so.
Yeah, it's funny, the I'll call it the criminal justice system, for lack of a better term, has historically always given more weight to eyewitness testimony over any other testimony, and it's probably the least reliable of the available evidence or types of evidence.
No, but I mean, it's something for people to keep in mind, and when I was on active duty, I always used to tell people, managers, I said, supervisors, assistant chiefs, DAs, and in our case, assistant U.S. attorneys. I said, hey, just because an agent says, hey, I fired 3 shots and you find 12 shell casings doesn't make him a liar.
Right.
Okay, because I gave him the example of me. I said, I fired 5 shotgun rounds, but and there's 5 casings, but I only remember firing 4 shots. Okay. And, I talked to a group of civil rights attorneys, because that's back when the Department of Justice was really going after cops, for excessive use of force or whatever. Yeah. And I talked to one particular assistant U.S. attorney. I said, hey, I'm telling you that, this is what happened. I fired 5 shots, but I only remember firing 4. So does that make me a liar? And this one hard ass said, yes. I said, well, okay, how am I lying? Because, I am not going to put on a statement that I fired 5 shots when I only remember 4, because I'm not going to let people put words in my mouth,
right?
For the stuff that I don't recall. I mean, it's that simple. And that's what I tell other officers. Don't let anybody put words in your mouth, because I mean, you can see the evidence after the fact that up here, you just have to go with what you got. somebody needs to reconcile those two differences, you know. And you know what the assistant U.S. attorney says? Well, he says, I would take your testimony as suspicious at best, you know.
Yep.
Okay, I know where
Yep.
you stand, you know.
Yep.
So, but
Yeah.
anyway, I digress too much.
Sure.
So,
Now you were injured. You had a bullet wound to your left arm, so you fired the shotgun single-handedly, right?
right, correct.
Had you had any training in that technique at all, or did you make that
You know,
up under the fly?
I've been asked that question 100 times, you know, and I had no training whatsoever. You know, and I
Okay.
didn't see it in a movie. I didn't read it in the book, but I kept thinking and pondering and, you know, trying to come up with an answer. Okay, and I told my wife, like 3 or 4 years ago, I said, man,
Mm,
I had a eureka moment, you know.
yeah.
I said, hey, you know what? I just remember something. When I was going through the application process in 1979, the FBI had what was called a trigger test. I don't know whether the departments had it at all.
Mhm.
You used to have to hold a standard issue
Yeah.
revolver up at eye level like this,
Mhm.
one-handed, and then pull the trigger on a revolver
Yeah.
as many times as you could for a minute or 30. I think it was
Right.
30 seconds. You know,
Yeah.
so you know if you scored, you know, X number, you know, you had
Yeah.
enough hand strength. You know, same thing with your left hand. Okay,
Mhm.
and the other test was we had to hold a 12 gauge shotgun up to our shoulder like this. Okay, up tight like this, and then you had to hold it one-handed. You had to put your support hand down like this, and you had to hold the shotgun up one-handed like this for 30 seconds.
Mhm.
Okay, and it wasn't until I thought about that process through at the recruiting process. That's the only time I ever held the shotgun one-handed.
Mhm.
Okay, and uh, holding it for 30 seconds, you know, and the agent was watching to make sure I kept it steady. In other words, it wasn't the
Mhm.
shotgun wasn't going like oh,
Yeah.
I can't hold it, I can't
Yeah.
hold it, you know. And I remember asking the agent, this is just so bizarro.
Yeah.
I said, I said, do you guys are really doing this? And he said, yeah, why? He said, who would ever shoot a shotgun one-handed anyway? You know, and he said, hey, he said, you never know. You know, and I remember that time, it just struck me like 40 years later, I
Yeah.
had this conversation with this agent at an Alexandria field office, you know.
Yeah.
It was a process that it was a strength test, you
Yeah.
know. And then I realized it's like, oh my God, that's probably where I came from, you know. I mean, I don't know what
Yeah.
else to say.
You have to be careful about asking yourself those questions. I was driving from Valdosta, Georgia to Albany, Georgia,
Mhm.
uh, for a football game one time. And I passed through the tiny town of Sylvester. And there was a brand new hotel that had just been opened right alongside the highway in Sylvester. It had the grand opening things, everything. And I left. I said, who would build a hotel in Sylvester, Georgia? Like, who's going to stop here and spend the night? And on the way back from Albany to Valdosta, my car broke down directly across the street from that. Guess where I spent the night that night?
You were probably guest number one.
Yeah. Yeah. So that hotel was built just for me because I was the one that spent the night there.
That's funny. That's karma. That's
Yeah.
karma for you.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier, how you show up places and people, oh no, that's not what happened, and
Yeah,
everything. It's amazing how certain things get into, I'll just say collective knowledge for lack of a better way to say it, and that people accept that. And like one of the things from the Newhall incident, people claim that the officers or the troopers were putting the empty shell casings in their pockets. Well, when you look at the crime scene photos, they're empty shell casings on the ground, so they
yeah,
obviously weren't putting them in their pockets, but that
yeah,
gets repeated over
yeah.
and over and over and over again. You already mentioned that some people claim that you guys had a tip when you've clearly stated that's not the case. What are some other things that, like, you've been told about the incident, like, oh no, this happened, but clearly didn't?
Well, you know what? One of the biggest things was you know, I mentioned the tip, you know, and then
Mhm.
somebody else said, hey, you know, uh, you had a telephone call, you know,
Mhm.
one physical person giving us a tip, and the other one was a telephone call. You know, it's like You guys should have had a SWAT team there because you knew something was going to happen. It's like, dude, I mean, that's not
Yeah.
true at all. Absolutely
Yeah.
not at all. But the other thing is, which bothered me was the fact that, hey, listen, you guys should have had the PD out there with you. And you know what? That's one of the ones that hurts most, I think, because man, FBI robbery and metro robbery, and we work like this, man. We were like every day. I mean, we saw
Mhm.
the same detectives, every day at
Yeah.
robberies. So there's I mentioned it in my book. We called robbery the night before and said, "Hey, we're going to be out on the highway, South Dixie Highway, tomorrow morning from 9 to 2. Can you join us? Can you help us? Because you guys have their different radio systems. You have different
Yeah.
informants and so on and so forth. And they said, hey man, thanks for asking, but we cannot do it tomorrow. We have been assigned to work another set of robberies, and they were working a 4 to midnight shift, or a 3 to 11. I don't know what their hours are. 3 to 11, 4 to midnight, because there was a rash of Circle K and 7-Eleven robberies in the area. Okay, that they were working. They were going to stake out some 7-Elevens and Circle Ks. Okay, so they were doing the same thing we were doing, except it's for Circle Ks and convenience stores. So they said, hey, we can't join you tomorrow. So and that was I'll always remember that, because it's like, again, one of those time and chance things. Could we have used another 12 detectives or 10 officers? Heck yeah, we could have used them. But it would have saved all this. Like, hey, I'm
Sure.
talking to the PD, I'm talking to the FBI here. It's like,
Yeah.
and driving. It's like just
Yeah.
crazy stuff. So, but
Yeah.
no, I mean, little stuff like that. There's some other little minutia stuff that happened. But I mean, not to that
Yeah.
level.
Yeah. So, what was the aftermath like? This incident, like all the fallout from it within the FBI.
You know, that's an interesting question, and I don't know how to phrase this or how to say it without sounding like an ass, you know. But I have to tell you that my own agency, not Miami, but FBI headquarters, was immediately like if not that day, the next day, casting blame on negligent agents, poorly prepared, uninformed, unprepared, and I think, what are you people talking about? You know, that where is this coming from? And it's like, you guys, were you should have had a SWAT. Same thing, should have had a
Yeah.
SWAT team out there if you knew these guys were I mean, they were getting the same bad information that everybody else was getting. And it wasn't until things got sorted out, that they backed off. There's a funny incident. And I'm almost afraid to say anything, but when we broke up from our meeting, John Hanlon and I were in the same car. We were at about 148th Street, and we had to drive to 130th. So we're driving. We left the meeting location. We're driving north, and I said, "Hey, Jake, why don't you pull into this McDonald's so we can get some coffee?" So he said, "Okay." So we pulled into the McDonald's, get some coffee. And when we're getting coffee, I call on the radio. I said, "Hey, Stevie," I said, "Hey, we're at the McDonald's. Do you want some coffee? I mean, I can get it for you since we're here." And he said, "No, thanks." He said, "I had some in the office, but thanks anyway." So I said, "Okay, fine." So that went on the air, and it was recorded, saying, "Hey, Mireles was having coffee, and he's letting the fucking Mireles was having coffee when his friends are getting shot." That was
Yeah.
actually, I
Yeah.
was actually told that by some headquarters supervisors.
Yeah.
You were having coffee when your friends are getting shot. I'm thinking, dude,
Well, then
are
explain
you
this bullet wound in my left arm, then,
yeah,
sir.
are you at the same scene that I was at?
Yeah.
So I mean, anyway, it was just all
Yeah.
pandemonium. It was all confusing and stuff. It took several days to sort things out.
Right.
But once things sorted out, Let me tell you another little
Sure.
incident. I guess people thought that I was somehow negligent or dereliction of duty or something like that, because they sent the FBI is very good, sending uh, employee assistance. What do they call, trauma
Yeah.
counselors
Yeah.
and stuff like that. We had an employee assistance program, EPA, and we normally had a counselor that was a regular in the
Mhm.
FBI, but he was busy. Okay, so they sent a substitute. Okay, and I'm literally 10 p.m. I've been up since like 5 in the morning, and
Mhm.
I'm just recovering from surgery at 10 p.m. And there's a knock at the door, and my wife is there. She goes, "Hey, I'm Bill Smith. I'm a psychiatrist with the FBI, and this and that. They asked me to come talk to your husband." So I said, "Okay." So I'm like all doped up, and
Mhm.
I can barely have my eyes open. I said, "Hey, how you doing?" He said, "Tata," I'm talking, and I'm half listening, half in and out, of
Mhm.
a drug-induced coma, And then he tells my wife, he says, "Hey, I need to talk to your husband in private." She goes, "Are you sure?" And she said, "Yeah." And he said, "Yeah." And so she stepped outside, but she didn't close the door. She stepped outside, and he starts talking to me, and I'm like literally like in and out of
Mhm.
consciousness,
Mhm.
and he starts saying, "Hey, you know what? There's negligence in this and negligence." I was like, "What? What are you saying?" And Liz was outside. She heard this, and she goes, "Excuse me, who are you?" He said, "Well, the bureau sent me." He said, "What are you saying? What are you telling my husband? Negligence and this and that and the other thing." I says, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, the FBI said." I said, and Liz says, "You need to leave.
Yeah.
You need to get out." So we laugh about it afterwards. But the FBI, the substitute they sent was a counselor, uh, uh, a psychologist, psychiatrist, who was called in on problem employees, like agents that like are caught,
Mhm.
shoplifting, or they're caught with a hooker, or stuff that
Mhm.
people do. Shoplifting is big. Problem employees, that are probably going to get
Mhm.
fired. So they sent him to talk to me about the shooting incident. And they probably said, "That son of a bitch stopped for coffee and didn't help his buddies." So
Oh,
Liz threw him out, and I vaguely remember, because I was like, I had just come
yeah.
out of surgery, and I'm doped up to the
Right.
ears. I'm just like,
Right.
so
Speaking of your wife, she's also an FBI agent and is on duty at the time and hears all of this on the radio. Is that
yeah,
correct?
she was actually in Homestead, which is from the shooting
Mm.
incident. It's south about 15 miles. She was out with her partner, because she
Uh-huh.
had something to do at 4 in the morning that morning. So
Mhm.
she actually left at like 3 in the morning,
Mhm.
and I said, "Hey, let's have lunch." That's the last thing I said, because I was
Yeah.
going to be in the same part of Miami. Let's do lunch. So
Mhm.
she said, "Okay, I'll hook up with you, on the radio or something." Literally, she hooked up on the radio. When she comes over to the crime
Mm.
scene, and she sees my jacket. She goes, "Where's Ed?" And
Mhm.
our friends from the squad said, "Hey, he was taken to South Miami Hospital." And
Yeah.
she said, "Okay, I know where that is." So she jumped in her car and went to South Miami. So,
Wow.
so many little funny things, that I
Yeah.
mean, we can laugh about it now.
Right.
Sometimes, they were a bit traumatic, so
Mhm. Oh, what changes took place in the FBI as far as like your procedures and protocols after this incident?
wow. I mean, that is huge. I mean, that's why I put down
Mhm.
the subtitle, 5 minutes to change the bureau.
Right.
Um, one of the first things that changed were weapons. The um, because the agents with the 9 millimeters, they had 30 shots. Okay,
Mhm.
I had 6, and I had 2 speed loaders. I had 18.
Right.
Okay, but I had to reload every 6 shots, as
Yeah.
opposed to having to if you have a pistol, you can reload after
Right.
15 shots. So that was big. The FBI started looking into converting, transitioning from revolvers to pistols, and that was the incident that helped it make a decision.
Mhm.
Okay, because the bad guys had the 30 caliber, the 30 round magazine on the assault rifle. Okay, and
Yeah.
the agents who were shot, every agent who was shot in the hand was a revolver shoot. Okay, going down, having to reload.
Right.
Okay, shot through the hand or shot in the arm. So, you know, they said, hey, you know what? I mean, it makes sense. You know, the guys that with the magazines, 30,
Mhm.
15 shots don't have to reload as often.
Right.
So that was the biggest change. Okay, and then a little bit deeper, it was the ballistics. Okay, because there were some hits that happened to one of the Platt that one of the doctors said, hey, this hit through his right arm and into his right lung, and should have killed him, should have stopped him. Okay, should have stopped him, and then eventually he should have died right away, or pretty close to death. And that's kind of misleading because I've talked to a doctor and he goes, hey, you know what? The hit was labeled non-survivable. Okay, and it was a non-survivable hit. That doesn't translate into instant kill. Okay,
Right.
there's a difference between non-survivable and like one shot, one kill. You know, that
Mhm.
doesn't equate. Okay, so sometimes people get confused, you know, between non-survivable, you know, and a sniper blowing your brain out, you know,
Right.
so you just drop, you know. So,
Mhm.
but people could not understand, you know. Here's the kicker: uh, the way he was wounded. Okay, 9 times out of 10, you know, or 99 times out of 100, the person who was shot in that manner probably should have given up. Okay,
Mhm.
so he was shot with a 9mm round. Okay, and it was a 115 grain silver tip hollow point. I think it was Remington or I forget, Remington Winchester,
I think
but
Winchester was the silver tip.
yeah, Winchester. Yeah.
Yeah.
So people can say, "Hey, that bullet was too light." That's the problem. Okay, and it was 115 grain. You know, and
Yeah.
there's a lot to be said about that. You know,
Mhm.
and I don't begrudge the 115 grain. I mean, I was told the bullet went through a lot of tissue. It went through his bicep and then through his lung. It's literally stopped a half inch from his heart.
Right.
You know, that's how close it came to hitting him in the heart.
Right.
Okay. So again, there's that time and chance, you know, but
Right.
people say, hey, listen, there was 115 grain, you know, you need something like 180, 200 grain
Mhm.
bullet, you know,
Yeah.
with some mass and some
Right.
speed, you know. So that caused the research into the calibers. Okay.
Yeah.
The 9mm versus 10mm versus the 45, you know, and then Smith and Wesson ended up coming up with the 40 caliber.
Mhm.
I don't know if people remember this, but when it first came out, you know, the actual bullet itself used to be the S&W 40
Mhm.
cal, no, 40 for, yeah,
Yeah. 40 S&W.
yeah,
Yeah.
40 S&W, yeah. So, you know, they
Except
basically,
except for the Glocks because they wouldn't put S&W on their gun. It was 40 auto.
exactly, exactly right. But the bullets themselves were the
Yeah.
S&W,
Yeah.
you know, 40. So, so that changed. And then, you know what, we started getting research into, you know, why did the Platmatics, you know, fight so much, you know? And I'm thinking that's easy because they were, it's their mindset, you know.
Mhm.
That's something you really can't study in an individual. You know, we were talking about it earlier, I think off camera. Um, why why do some certain people react a certain way, and why do other people react differently? You know, it's like, well, you know, it
Mhm.
goes it there's a ton of variables. Okay, your age, your
Yeah.
physical conditioning, your training is huge,
Mhm.
huge training. Okay, I mean it could be as subtle as, are you a man or a woman?
Yeah.
Okay, uh, it could even be your religion. What are your beliefs in life? You know, do you
Right.
believe in an afterlife? Do you believe in a non-afterlife?
Mhm.
I mean, there are so many different variables.
Mhm.
Okay, uh, but the biggest variable and the biggest contributor is training. Okay. Uh, and we went up against two guys who were trained by the 101st Airborne. Okay. I mean, and I was trained by the Marine Corps. I mean, you know, you never
Mhm.
give up. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
you know, I hate to use the term, you know, but I'll use it. You know,
Yeah.
when the first time I ever heard this, you know, I was like, I had to stop and think about it for a second, you know. and that was in the Marine Corps, and it was very simple. It said death before dishonor.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, what did you say? They said it's better to be dead than to dishonor yourself. So, and I'm thinking, wow, that's a pretty serious commitment.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you kind of laid, I kind of like the old poker. I'm all in,
Yeah. Yeah.
death before dishonor. And I
Yeah.
tell you, that mindset, I, there are people out there. There
Yeah.
are. You hear all the cliche, all the BS and stuff. Hey, they'll never take me alive.
Mm-hmm.
The people that mean it
Yeah.
they don't have to
Yeah.
say it. I
Right.
mean, they know it.
Yeah.
People don't go around saying, "Hey, you'll never take me alive." That's just somebody boasting.
Mhm.
But Platt and Maddox, man,
Yeah.
they were military trained. As was I. It's like, hey, uh, that training. And
Yeah.
I tell people, I say, hey, what is training? Training, you build a base. You build a base to
Mhm.
stand on.
Yeah.
Training is problem solving. Okay, it's physical fitness, teamwork, and it's problem solving. That's all training is. Okay, you,
Yeah.
you have a problem, whether it's, hey, I need to get 100 points on this to keep my job, or in the military we used to have all these
Mhm.
different problems. You got to
Mhm.
get this wounded man, 200-pound dummy across this open water, and you've
Mhm.
got a toothpick and a paperclip. Now get him across.
Yeah.
Kind of like a MacGyver thing. So,
Yeah.
but that helps you think. It makes you think
Mhm.
outside the box. It forms
Yeah.
teamwork and all kinds of stuff. I mean, that's important. So,
Yeah.
but the bureau kept looking at it, saying, "Hey, why did these two guys keep fighting?" It's that mindset.
Yep.
Survivor mindset. And it just it's big now. I mean, now everybody talks
Mhm.
about it like
Mhm.
it's like old hat. But back then, when
Right.
the law enforcement was going, what the hell happened here?
Yeah.
You know, how did these two guys? Why did they keep fighting?
Yeah.
Because Maddox was shot 6 times, four in the head, one in the neck, and one in the wrist. Okay, and Platt was shot 12 times. Platt was shot to pieces. I mean, really, literally.
Mhm.
Okay, broken bones, severed arteries, collapsed lung. Uh, I hit I hit him in the forehead right here. It cracked his skull. Just injuries, injuries, and he kept fighting. He kept fighting till his last breath. I mean, death before dishonor, or they'll
Yeah.
never take me alive. So
Yeah.
survivor mindset.
Yeah.
And you really have to practice it. I mean, you just
Right.
can't show up one morning and drink coffee and say, "Hey, I have a survivor mindset."
Yeah.
You got to practice it. I mean, I'm 70 years old now. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
a little bit out of shape.
Yeah.
Like 30 years out of shape. So, but young officers, man, you got to be fit. You got to be
Mhm.
alert. You got to be well trained, train, train. Okay, that's the bottom line, man. Training, and never give up. Oh,
Yeah.
and another thing is wound ballistics. Okay, what do bullets do to a human target?
Mhm.
Okay, and that's one of the areas that I've studied a lot. And it's like I just said, Maddox was shot 6 times, four to the face, and one to the neck, severed his brachial artery and
Mhm.
vein, and the nerve bundle. I mean, it just totally severed the use of his right arm. Just
Yeah.
no blood flow back and forth, and the nerves kept. So this arm, this tool is done. Okay, but what do bullets do to human targets? I mean, human tissue. Okay, it's like, and that answer is, some of it is physical. If you get hit in the spinal cord, obviously you're
Mhm.
you're going down. I mean, your connection, your nerve endings have just been severed. Okay, that's one thing. Or if you get shot through the brain, by a sniper, lights
Mhm.
out. But other hits are, you know, there's a lot of wiggle room. A lung hit, I mean, it's going to be very
Yeah.
unpleasant, but you can still survive.
Right.
Uh, hits to different parts of the body. If you don't hit a weight bearing bone like your thigh, you
Mhm.
can keep functioning.
Yeah.
Um, but it's all a matter of wound ballistics and mindset. Okay. I've heard stories of people getting wounded like in the shoulder or hand. They quit fighting. They say,
Mhm.
"Oh my God, this hurts too much," or "No, I can't work." Baloney, man. You still have a left hand, you may have to save your life with your left hand.
Right.
So, I
Yeah.
mean, there's so many different variables out there. So many
Yeah.
different variables.
It dawns on me that when people talk about this incident, they talk about all the stuff that those two guys did after they were wounded, after he had received the non-survivable wound.
Yeah,
And I sit back and think, Ed Mireles did some pretty good work after he was wounded too.
yeah. No, you know what though? You know, if I can get into it, I don't want to make this
Sure.
thing into a 4-hour lecture, but
We got all the time you want.
people that have asked me, "Hey, what's it feel like to get shot?" And I used to be, snarky about it. Say, "Hey, I don't know." You
Yeah.
know, it's like, but you know what? Though there's a lot of truth to that answer
Yeah.
because when I was shot, okay, I mean, this round hit me here. Really, it
Mhm.
just I had no clue, and it just people say, how did it knock you down? And
Mhm.
I don't know. I just went back,
Mhm.
and it wasn't that the force hit me, but it was there was a little bit of force, but the other part of it was a neurological reaction. And I tell people that about the best way I can explain it. If you've ever been a deer hunter,
Mhm.
when you shoot a large land mammal like that, sometimes when you hit them just right, they'll actually jump up. There's a
Yeah.
neurological reaction, or they'll jump and then run, and
Yeah.
if you're good, they'll fall down, in 2 or 3 paces. And I'm telling them, I say, hey, my body reacted like a large land mammal.
Yeah.
It kind of jerked, and I went back. Okay, and I'm looking forward, like I'm looking at you right now, and then like in that split second, I'm looking up at the sky, thinking, what the hell happened? I had no clue, and I really had no idea.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm trying to use my left hand to push up. I've got the shotgun in my right hand. I'm using my left hand to try to push me up, because Gordon McNeil is up, on the car, and I'm trying to get up to reinforce him, and I had no clue. It took me like a minute. I can't say more than a minute, maybe a minute, 10 seconds. It's hard to tell. I'm just gauging it. It took me about a minute to actually realize that I had been shot. I had no pain at all, no pain
Mhm.
sensation whatsoever. And the only reason I looked at my arm is because it wasn't working. I was trying to use my hand to push up off the pavement. And I had to make a visual inspection of my left arm. Why wasn't it working? And when I made the visual inspection, I'm thinking, oh shit. That's when I came. It's like, holy cow, what the hell is that down there? And
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it was my arm. I actually reached over with my good hand and I brought it up in front of me like this, I'm thinking, oh my God, it's attached. And I'm thinking,
Mhm.
okay. And then I just kind of threw it back on the ground, grabbed the shotgun, and continued to scan for a threat because bullets are still going over my head. So, but again, I went through the same process. When I realized that I had a grazing head, well, I didn't know it was grazing at the time. I thought I had actually been shot. I put the shotgun down and I actually put my fingers like this, and I went
Mhm.
expecting to feel a big mush open spot
Yeah.
here in my brain and stuff.
Yeah.
And luckily, all I felt was skull, my hard skull. So
Yeah.
I think, well, it must have just been a grazing head wound because I saw the arterial bleeding coming out.
Yeah.
I'm thinking I'm doing this, and
Yeah.
it just, like stupid first aid. When I was doing this, I actually
Yeah.
pushed a flap of skin over the artery that had been severed. And I went like this, and I pushed
Mm.
the flap of skin over the artery, and it slowed the bleeding down. It was still
Yeah.
bleeding, but not
Right.
not squirting. So,
Yeah.
but just weird stuff. I
Mhm.
didn't even know I'd been shot.
Mhm.
But see, once I realized I was shot, it was it's important. It was psychologically devastating. It really was. It's like, oh man, it's tough enough to survive, and now I
Mhm.
have to survive with a shattered arm.
Yeah.
It's going to make it doubly hard, which meant that I had to, stay firm, stay on task doubly hard myself.
Mhm.
So I kept looking for threats. And this incident lasted so long. I started actually towards the end. I started actually passing out. I was losing consciousness from the blood loss. I was going, like literally my chin would hit my chest. It would wake me up, startle me. It's like, oh my God. It scared the heck out of me because it was like, what the hell, So it took a bit to stay focused towards the end, so
Yeah.
much less find those front sights.
Yeah. So here's a good question. Did you see your sights?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I knew, you know what though, I don't want to
Yeah.
be dramatic or
Right.
or anything else, but I knew your front sight is life. I mean,
Mhm.
we both know that this tool that you have, the handgun or the longer tool, a rifle, the only way that tool is going to work is to make it work properly. And you got to
Yeah.
put the front sight in between the rear sight and then put those sights aligned on the target.
Yeah.
It can't work any other way.
Right.
Any other way, you're just making noise. Just making noise. Like shooting your rifle off at New Year's. Big deal. No, but the only way you're going to make it work is the front sight. And I remember the front sight on my shotgun clearly, even right now, as we're having a conversation, I can see it in my mind's eye, and I can see the front sight on my revolver when I started moving in on the target. Front sight, front sight, front sight. And I've actually had people argue with me, saying there's no possible way that you could have seen that front sight. What makes you say that? I think it was a doctor or something.
Yeah.
He was doing some research, and he heard my lecture. Because he had been doing a bunch of research. The
Mhm.
people. He said people will go. I think his theory was people would go down to point shooting. Okay, and I have no disagreement with that.
Mhm.
Okay, and if you're close, like within I don't know,
Yeah.
10 yards maybe,
Yeah.
7 yards, point shooting can work. Okay, but you still have to have eye, hand, with your finger that say, hey,
Mhm.
wherever you point your finger is where your eye, wherever your eye looks is where your finger's going to go. Okay, I don't know, but he kept saying you couldn't have seen your front sight. So I think, Doc, what are you talking about? I mean, I'm telling you, I'm standing here right in front of you, telling you that my whole focus, I was passing out, and my whole world was tunneling down because everything was getting black. And I said, the only thing that I could see was my revolver, my hand, and I could see the car at the end of the tunnel. I said, and because of the tunnel, I said, I knew it was going to be a tough shot because in my perception was I was shooting at 25 yards. Okay, the reality was I was shooting at 25 feet. Okay, so I think that helped me concentrate more because I'm thinking, hey, I'm making a 25-yard shot. That means, I mean, I've shot at
Mhm.
25, and that's unforgiving sometimes, one-handed,
Yeah.
So I'm coming up and I'm thinking, okay, it's a 25-yard shot. So I concentrated very, very firmly on the front sight. I told him, and he goes, after we had our conversation, this is like at some conference somewhere in the 90s. He said, man, I'm going to have to go back and reevaluate my data. I said, well, I'm not telling you what to do, Doc, but I said,
Right.
for my incident, my personality, my recollection is front side, and that's it. I mean, you've got to keep thinking, front side, front
Mhm.
side, front side. We both know that you can't. I mean, you can point shoot at something if it's close,
Yeah.
you know, but you know, my perception was shooting at 25 yards. You cannot point shoot at 25 yards, man.
Right.
You might hit one out of 20, so if you're lucky, so, but
Right.
I don't know. I mean, interesting things
Right.
that come to your recollection. So
That's fascinating stuff. As we let off the show, we talked about, this incident was part of your life. It's not your entire life. What
mhm.
would you like to share with the audience about Ed Mireles after the Miami firefight?
Ooh, Ed Mireles after the Miami. Well, I was not indicted. I was
Was
not
there an
fired.
attempt? Was there an attempt to indict you?
No. I mean, my
Yeah.
career afterwards,
Yeah.
I wasn't indicted for my
Okay.
activity, and I wasn't fired. You
Right.
know, and I don't think I'm going to hell for my activity. So I
Right.
think I stayed on the right
Right.
side of the law. So,
Yeah.
but I say that in jest because I made a joke when I went to the FBI transferred me to Quantico because, I mean, I was disabled for 27 months.
Okay.
I was on light duty. I mean, my arm was totally toast. I mean, completely toast.
Mhm.
I went through rehab, the physical therapy, like for literally 27 months. And I couldn't lift anything. It was painful and all this sort of stuff. They did a great job reconstructing the arm. So I'm totally grateful for that. But when I was at Quantico, it was great because I got to share my experiences, with new agents and police officers, and that's kind of how I got my start in the lecture circuit in the '90s. And but when the doctor told me, hey, you are fit for duty. I'm taking you off light duty. Okay. As soon as he said that, I went home to talk to Liz, and I said, hey, the doctor said I'm fit for duty, so I'm not. There's no more restriction. I said, I know how you feel. So I said, I'm asking you now, do you want to get out of Quantico? And she said, yes. We wanted to leave Quantico because both of us, we're people of action. It's like, hey, I told Liz, I don't want to play cop at Quantico. I want to be a cop. So, and don't get me wrong, and I hope people don't take this the wrong way. Quantico is fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. I ended my career at Quantico. But I ended my career as a senior old agent. Okay. When I went to Quantico the first time, I was in my early 30s. I mean, I didn't want to be, I wanted to be a cop, not play cop, So I went to management and I said, hey, doctor said I'm on full duty now. And I said, hey, I thought about it. And I want to request a transfer out of Quantico. And they said, okay, you want to go to FBI headquarters to be a supervisor? And I said, no, I don't want to be a headquarters supervisor. I said, are you crazy? I said, I'll be thrown out of headquarters in a week, So I said, hey, Liz and I want to go back to Miami. And they ended up looking at me like I had two heads. So they're looking at me like, what? Why do you want to go back to Miami? I said, hey, the weather's great. The food is great, and all our friends are in Miami. All our friends are in Miami. So we want to go back. And plus the work's great, so they said, no, we're not going to send you to Miami. So, I mean, this went back and forth for several weeks or months, I said, hey, and management said, hey, Ed, you know what though? You're a good guy and all that, but we're going to send you to a psychiatrist. They sent me to a freaking psychiatrist. Okay. They thought I was Looney Tunes or something. I don't know. They said, why do you want to go back to Miami? I said, because the weather, the food, the people, and the work. I mean, what else do you want? I certainly don't want to go to WFO.
Yeah.
Why would I want to go to Washington field office, man? It's like commuting 1 hour to get to work. I said, give me a break. Come on, guys. So they said, nope. They sent me to a psychiatrist. And he said, why do you want to go back to Miami? The 4 reasons, He said, is that the only reason? I said, yeah. I didn't want to tell him. I said, hey, I'm pretty tired of Quantico. I mean, I have to be polite all the time, and it's very difficult for me to be polite all the time. If you know what I mean. So,
Yeah.
but the psychiatrist didn't see anything wrong with it, but he didn't want to take a risk. He said, okay, I will sign off on this if you can do this. He said, I want you to take a TDY trip to Miami for a couple of weeks or a month, and then and see how you react. And I looked at him and said, Doc, I said, how in the hell am I going to arrange for a TDY to Miami for a month? I don't have that kind of authority. He said, well, that's up to you. You work it out. But he said, I'm not going to approve anything until you go to Miami, spend some time down there, see how you react, and then come back and tell me, report back to me. I said, Jesus Christ almighty, man, give me a break. So I was stuck between a rock and a hard spot. So, and I called Miami looking for favors, and it's like, hey, Mother Help covered. And who? Hanging up the phone. No, but I got a hold of Gordon McNeil, who was still down there. Said, hey, Ed, we're having a recruiting event, in a couple of weeks at one of the universities or something like that. It's going to be an all-week recruiting event. So why don't you come down on Sunday, spend the week here recruiting, meeting, all the young people and stuff like that. Spend the week down here, spend the weekend before and the weekend after, and then that should satisfy it. So I said, okay. So I arranged it, and I went down to Miami. It was with Gordon. It was a great time. He's a great guy. Was a great guy, and talked to young students. People, in college and stuff like that. It was like a college workshop, and I love crushing their dreams. It's like young people, all enthusiastic, bushy-eyed. It's like, oh my God, and you crush their dreams for them. So, yeah, the entry level pay is $20,000. It's like what?
Yep.
You have to really be dedicated if you want to be an FBI agent.
Yep.
They said, you're joking, right? I said, no. At the time, it was like 25, 20,000, it was like, it was pretty good pay for the time. They were like, are you kidding me? They expected to make twice that much, so.
Yeah.
But anyway, I went back, told the doc, I said, hey, doc, I went down there and said, how long were you down there? I said, a weekend and a weekend and a week, so that's not enough time. I said, doc, I don't have control. I can't, if I could, I'd send myself TDY to San Diego. What the hell, It's like, I'd go to love San Diego weather too, So he said, okay. So, I said, I didn't take hostages. I didn't end up sitting in my room crying, or anything else, so everything is fine. So he said, okay. He reluctantly signed off on it. And as soon as he signed off, I requested a transfer to Miami. And that's how I ended up back in Miami in 1989. So the question is, what did I do after my shooting? And I told, I didn't tell the doctor because he would have committed me, but I told all my friends, I said, hey, you know what? After the shooting incident, I had a near death experience. I said, I needed something to kind of like relax and take it easy, So I ended up working undercover narcotics in Miami.
Oh, what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah, really. What's the worst that can happen? Well, and I ended up working narcotics for like 15 years, but I worked undercover a great deal. There was a 5-year stretch where I worked undercover like for 5 years, So, but as it turns out, I was involved in a second shooting incident in a drug case in 1993 or 92, I forget when it was. One of those things. It was only 6 shots fired, So
Only 6, yeah.
But the thing is, I wasn't the shooter. I was the agent next to the shooter because I was looking this way and he was looking that way, and he saw something over there and he just opened up, And of course, by the time I turned, the threat was gone, So no, I think it was only one bad guy shot. So, but
the sequels are never as good as the original.
Yeah, no, it's like it was okay. Was it good for you? Yeah, it was good.
Is there anything that you would like to discuss that I have not asked you about tonight?
No, you know what though? I just want to close by saying, hey guys, especially you active duty guys, man, training. And I know departments, agencies, you hate to say it, but budgets run departments, budgets run training, and you have to work within your budgets. But I tell you what, though, there's all kinds of different training you can do. Dry fire training, maybe you can pay for your own training, pay for your own ammo. But, there's no sense going to practice firearms, if you're going to be doing shooting like this all the time. No, you need to have good technique. Okay. You need to have, you've got to have the basic fundamentals of firearms. Okay. But the just bust caps downrange, you might as well just, save your money, but you can make you can make the best of training, even on a limited budget for individuals or departments. And I have found that one of the most unforgiving courses that you can fire is what we call the 30-shot bullseye course. You start at the 25 slow fire 10 rounds, and then you move to the 15 and you slow fire 10 rounds, and then at the 15 you rapid fire 10 rounds. Okay, and not all 10 at the same time, but it's 5, 5, 5, and 5, 5. Okay, and you're shooting at a bullseye about the size well smaller than my face,
Yeah.
like this. Okay, at 25 yards, it is unforgiving. I mean, you
Mhm.
have to have the basic fundamentals of firearms training to be able to hit that bullseye. You got to have that first before you go into combat shooting. Okay, everybody says, "Hey, let's get into combat, dude." I mean, yeah, I love combat shooting too, but if you can't shoot for beans, on a bullseye course, you need to master that first.
Right.
So training is my advice, and then always our environment has gotten so bad with all the defund the police crap that's going on out there. I mean, it breaks my heart because I see a lot of departments losing people.
Mhm.
Even the FBI is having trouble recruiting people. I mean, it's like amazing. I mean, it's just across the nation. Okay, there are some good departments out there. People that are hiring and bonuses and all this other good stuff. But we all can't end up in Texas and Florida.
Yeah.
So I mean, we have to kind of spread it out. So, but it's almost to a point where you need to have your head on a swivel all the time. And you need to know that your department and your jurisdiction is going to have your back. Okay, I mean, because honestly, I don't think I could work for a department that is squishy on
Mhm.
having my back. I don't. I knew the FBI always had my back. Okay, period. End of story. And I don't know how it is today. I mean, in today's environment, I think they probably still do. But and if not, man, you have to make a serious choice. It's like, hey, do I go to the neighboring jurisdiction or do I go to the next state over or whatever? Because it is your life, your livelihood. And if anything happens, you're the one that has to pay the price. And then the other issue is, I keep telling people, that because everybody seems to be like gun shy now, and I don't mean that as a joke, as a
Mhm.
little tongue in cheek, but everybody seems to be gun shy now, and I keep telling them, I say, hey, folks, deadly force, deadly force policy. The mayor in your city doesn't set deadly force policy. The city council in your city doesn't set the deadly force policy. The governor in your state doesn't set deadly force policy. The Supreme Court of the United States has set the deadly force policy. Okay, so it doesn't matter what some Yahoo mayor or city councilman says. Obviously you have to work this out with the
Mhm.
department and your legal advisors, I think in the FBI we had legal advisors,
Mhm.
if you wanted to run some legal issue by them. It's like, hey, can I do this? Can I do that? No, you can't do that, but you can do this, so that type of stuff. So deadly force is the law of the land, period. End of story. A police officer has the right to use deadly force to protect himself from death or serious injury. He has that right to protect his partner. He has that right to protect the citizens of his community. Okay. And you should not second guess that. Okay. If you have any doubts, then you're in the wrong department. You're in the wrong job. Because I always tell people, I say, hey, there should never be a question in your mind about the deadly force. You know what? If and after my shooting incident, I'll tell you what, I was people knew, you know, got to watch Ed, man, because Ed will see something that's a threat and he will respond like a laser. And people knew that, say, hey, they almost had to have somebody in front of me that keep, like a friendly target in front of me to keep me from lighting somebody up, because I wouldn't tolerate it. I mean, I was shot twice. I will not tolerate anybody, even looking at me like they have a gun or a knife. No way. Okay, and that's the same way officers should look at things. It's like, well, he only had a knife. He shouldn't have shot. Forget about it, dude. I've seen videos of police officers retreating a city block from a guy with a knife. It's like, give me a break, man. I mean, I don't understand it. I mean, you know, there is leeway. You give, but not a whole city block. I mean, I'm not going to run
Yeah.
backwards 100 yards.
Yeah.
It's like, give me a break. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a point. So deadly force. the right to use deadly force, and never forget that. Okay. The other thing is, you are also protected by the same rights that every other citizen is protected by. You have the right to an attorney. You have the right to remain silent. If you think you've done something that's on the line, let me step back to deadly force.
Sure.
The Supreme Court deadly force policy is 100%. Okay. Most agencies that I've been around since my FBI career, most agencies will set their deadly force policy at 95%, 90%. You see the difference?
Mhm.
Supreme Court is 100%. Your department policy is 90%. That means that they give you 10%. They give you some leeway. If you screw up, you still have that buffer. You're still within the Supreme Court range. Okay.
Mhm.
So they always set deadly force policy a little tighter than the Supreme Court. Okay. So if you end up screwing up something with your department, you're still protected by, you still have that leeway, that buffer zone for the Supreme Court. Okay. So that's understandable, because they always say, hey, most agencies' policies are tighter than the Supreme Court rulings. Okay. And that gives you, it's kind of like gives you, if you like step outside the line, you're still protected. So you got to remember that part. Now, the other part is wound ballistics. Okay. There's so many misconceptions out there that, hey, if I get shot, I'm going to be incapacitated. Well, that is a possibility. Okay. But people need to understand that it is super hard, very hard to kill a human target. That's the only way I can tell you. And I'm being blunt about it, a human target. Okay. A human being, somebody who's trying to kill you or kill your partner or kill your family, whatever. Okay. It is very difficult to kill a human target. Okay. So the same applies to you. Just because you get injured, whether you're shot, stabbed, or hit with a stick or whatever, that doesn't mean that you should die. Don't have it in your mind, hey, listen, I've been shot, I need to die. No, hell no. You need to keep persevering. You need to keep fighting. You need to come up with an option, a plan, so some sort of reaction. Okay. So you can take a massive amount of punishment before you die. Okay. It's been proven so many times, so many times. Just look at the news, read the papers. So and so was shot 3 times and survived. Okay, I've seen it both ways. I've seen somebody get shot or injured. There was a guy who shot himself with an arrow through the thigh. He was an idiot. He didn't bandage it up, and he bled to death. Okay, there's another guy that shot 6 times in the chest. He survived. So I mean, there's so many variables out there. So just because you're injured doesn't mean you're going to die. Okay, the human body can take massive amounts of punishment. Okay, so it's hard to kill a human target. Remember that. It works for bad guys. It works for you. Okay, so my point is, if you think you killed the bad guy or stopped him, keep an eye on him regardless. Okay, until you get cuffs on him. And then it never hurts, and I'm almost reluctant to say this, but it never hurts, and I don't, budgets are tight, it never hurts to have, I honestly don't know how departments work now with the police unions and all this sort of stuff, but depending on your circumstances, it never hurts to have your personal liability insurance. I have personal liability insurance for shootings. Okay. And I'm not a shill for any company or organization. I won't even mention it, but if anybody's interested, they can get a hold of you, and then I'll tell them, I'll tell you what I had, but it's almost to a point where, in today's society, stupid mayors and city councils they're pulling the qualified immunity for officers. A lot of states have pulled that from officers. If you do anything, you're subject to lawsuits, or any whim, any scumbag can sue you for anything now.
Yeah.
Okay. So it almost to a point where you need your own liability insurance, even though you're a professional police officer or whatever you are.
I think it
So
was Colorado that passed the law that every officer had to carry their own personal liability
Okay, see,
insurance.
that's news to me, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, it doesn't hurt, you know, it doesn't hurt to have it, you know. And then God, I had one more thing. I forgot what it was now. Um, it'll come to me in a second. I just want to say, hey, listen, you know, it's it's a marathon, not a race. Um, it and sometimes, you know, you get bogged down with minutia, you get bogged down with bullshit. Okay, and it's tough, you know, but you can persevere. And if you can't, you know, I mean, there's maybe the grass is green around the other side, some other
Yeah.
jurisdiction, some other city. You know, you never know. But I mean, you know, we need true warriors. You know, we need true sheepdogs. You know, because there's a lot of wolves out there. You know, so a lot of wolves out there, and you know, in the end, you know, guys, ladies, you need to take care of yourself individually. You know, I mean, I wasn't joking. I am 70 years old. I mean, I know I look like a spry 65-year-old guy, you know, but you know, I managed to survive to be 70, you know, but I've taken a lot of lumps. I mean, a lot of
Yeah.
hits. You know, my knees don't work anymore. My hips don't
Yeah.
work anymore. My arm, my wounded arm, it's never worked, you know, since '86, you know. So, but you know, you got to take care of yourself, take care of your fitness, your mental fitness too. And don't be afraid to seek help. You know, see your family, your coworkers, your religious folks. You know, whether it's a rabbi, a priest, or whatever. Um, you know, and you got to take care of your family, take care of yourself, and take care of your colleagues. Okay, because in the end, guys, I mean, like I said, I've been retired almost 20 years now. In the end, all I have is my family. Okay, because a lot of my friends, you know, we're getting up there. It's like, man, you look around, you know, who showed up for roll call? I mean, there's fewer and fewer people, you know,
Yeah.
showing up for roll call. You know, so in the end, all you're going to have is your family. So you got to
Yeah.
take care of your family, and that's it, Lee. I mean,
Sure.
you know, I'm rambling now, you know. So
Uh, Well, sir, thank you for taking the time to come on the show and
yep,
share all your insight.
yep,
And I very much appreciate it. And, you know, it's to actually be able to talk to someone who was involved in such a pivotal incident is a big deal. And, you know, in history classes in college, they talked about the importance of going to the primary source.
mhm,
And, you know, you are obviously the primary source available for
yeah.
the Miami incident. And so thank you for making yourself available.
No, Lee, it
And
was my pleasure. You know, I'll go out of my way for any copper, man, anytime,
sure.
anywhere. I mean, because I mean, you know, if you are one, I am one. You know, I love cops.
Sure.
You know, men, women. You know,
Yeah.
federal, state, and local doesn't matter.
Right.
As long as you're a good guy, you know, rule of law. You know,
Mhm.
follow the rules. You know,
Mhm.
I love coppers. You know, and
Sure.
you know, anytime anybody wants me to talk to them, you know, they can
Mhm.
contact me through you,
Mhm.
and we can work something out. You know, so
Sure.
I mean, I don't know everything, but
Right.
what you know, I know a little bit. You
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And it's been
Well,
my pleasure, Lee.
well,
It really has been.
well, thank you. And to the audience, we know that your most important asset is your time. So after you hit the subscribe button, if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for your time.
Absolutely.